Welcome to the Drop the Needle podcast, your backstage pass to the mystical realm. I'm your host, Jim Alstott, and here, gifted souls step up to the mic sharing their spiritual journey. We're hitting the high notes and the low notes of their awakening, creating a symphony of enlightenment. This isn't just another interview show. This is where divine insights are channeled and universal truths are revealed. So crank up your stereo and sit back, because who knows, this just might help you compose the next transformative chapter of your soul's purpose. Are you ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Drop the Needle podcast. I'm your host, Jim Alstott, and I'm so happy you all decided to join us. Today's guest used to fantasize about getting hit by a truck on his way to his finance job. Then he had an actual near-death experience that left him with PTSD, panic attacks, and unable to be alone with his own daughters for 9 months. But that trauma became his training ground. Now, 20,000 sessions later, Matan Kohan-Sitran has become a master at helping people release trauma stored in the body, combining hypnosis, qigong, movement, and shadow work into something that actually works. He went from following everyone else's formula to discovering that sometimes your old ways have to die in order to find out who you really are. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Matan Kohan-Sitran. Welcome.
Thank you. Very happy to be here, Jim.
Happy to have you on. Thank you for making the time for this. Why don't we take a moment and let everyone know a little bit about yourself?
So formally I got into training. I was 21 years old, and I knew that I'm going to try yoga. I'm going to give yoga a try. And that was my, like every story has to have a beginning, but the beginning is way before. Right. It's childhood, it's perception, it's trauma, it's family, it's all of that. However, when I was 21 years old, I knew that I'm going to try yoga. And I traveled around the world and I started practicing with different teachers. Until I met 2 years into that journey, I met my first teacher. So he was obviously 2 years into the journey. He wasn't my actual first teacher, but it was the first time that I got a system, a medicine that worked for me, means it served me to where I was at that moment in time. And it was such a big shift in my life. All of a sudden, my heart started to open. I was able to fall in love, to stay longer with a partner. And I said that if there is a practice like that can support me in that way, I'm going to do it every day. And about 25 years later, I'm still doing something every day to take care of my body, my mind, my psychic, my spirituality.
That's wonderful. So where were you born?
I was born in Israel.
Okay, because obviously there's an accent, and I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware where you came from. So thank you for sharing that. And that's a great story, and it's a great point, too, that every story has a beginning. It's got to start somewhere, right? Yeah. So if you don't mind, let's jump into some questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So you fantasized about getting hit by a truck to escape your job.
Yeah.
Then had an actual near-death experience.
Yes.
Did the universe have a sixth sense of humor, or were you literally manifesting your own wake-up call?
I think I was manifesting my own wake-up call at some moment. It was years later, like between quitting finance and having that near-death experience. It was, I think, about 8-9 years. Yes. Wow. But I do have part, I think we asking if we have a part or we don't have a part. I did have part in fantasizing about this happened to me, and really wanting to claim my life.
So it's one of those things. It's where your focus goes, your energy flows, and that from the universe picking up on that and fantasizing about it. It must have been a pretty rough time for you to think that that was the only way out of your situation.
Yes, I guess the one thing that is common for most people is that we underestimate our own power, and we live in a place that we change by pain more than we change by thinking positively. So
Yes.
I think people will make I call it like it's easier in our culture to move from 1 to 3 or from 2 to 4 instead of taking your life and your life is 8 or 7 and to move them to a 9. So I think this is something that we live in right now.
Yeah. I also think a lot of that has to do with the instant gratification that we as humanity looks for, especially right now. You know, that I want this now, I want it now, I want it now. And you bypass some of the educational moments, if you will, because pain is the greatest motivator for sure. So after 20,000 sessions, what's the one trauma pattern you see stored in everyone's body that nobody talks about? You know, the thing that we're all carrying around, but pretending we're not.
There are few, but if I have to pick one, is self-abandonment. Because, and I will explain it. Because we all have the version of our 3 years old that run careless without clothes and, like doing whatever we do, dance in front of ourselves, in front of others. And then at one point we get a cue from life that we're very cute or that we're not cute, and whatever happens to us, trauma, not trauma, and we are living ourselves. It's like we're living our art. We're living and we're shifting to a different way of existence, and it can be expressed in later in life in whatever, in weight issues, in anxiety, in depression, in boundaries issue. But I think this is part of the journey that we all have to experience. Maybe from a spiritual point of view, it's this is life. This is why we're here. Like, because as kids, most kids are very connected to themselves. Like, I look at my girls. My girls are now 13 and 16. When they were like 2-3 years old, it's like pure life. No friction or anything like that. And as we grow older, we have that friction that moves us away from being ourselves. So I think this is personally what I really enjoy doing, is having people, helping people get to that that they're appreciating themselves. They feel their self's energy. In yoga, we call it the self.
You call it the what? I'm sorry?
We call it the self, like what you want.
Oh, yes. Okay.
You want to experience self, the energy of yourself.
Yes.
Instead of the mind of, I have that conditioning of the ego.
That's interesting that you say that, because as you were discussing the free flow of childhood, when you're just in the flow all the time in that bliss state, it seems to me that a lot of the friction that we cause ourselves is self-induced as we go along. We add those layers of whatever to our soul, to our purpose, to whatever, and it causes that friction. It starts to build and grow. So it's very interesting.
I think about it. It's a double-edged sword, because it's based on survival. It's based on safety. The reason that I become anxious, or that a person become anxious, or doesn't care, or care too much, or whatever the behavior is, it's an old pattern, and it's usually at some point we try to change it, and it comes with a lot of shame and a lot of judgment around it. So a lot of time that was my experience. Using another person and another nervous system, and that's true to many different healing modalities, that there is a neutral nervous system that is not going into that fight and fight or freeze or fawn or whatever nervous
Hmm.
system response. It's super helpful in healing that that wound, that little trauma that we carry.
That's very, very good. And it's very insightful. I agree with that. So I want to go back then and talk about this because this is something that you mentioned on your website and through our conversation. And I've mentioned it before on the show that we have pre-show calls just to get to know each other and have some conversation. And you had said that you couldn't be alone with your daughters
Yeah,
for 9 months after your NDE.
yeah.
As a trauma expert now, what was happening in your body that all your yoga and qigong training couldn't touch at that time?
I was in PTSD. Like my nervous system was completely out of alignment.
Mm,
Like going through cycles that used to take me 3 weeks used to take me 3 hours. So it was just out of alignment. I wasn't feeling safe in my body. I got the belief unconsciously that I'm not safe,
mm,
and my body reacted accordingly. And there was a big energy in the body that I had to release it. And there are different kinds of trauma. And for me, it wasn't something that it took a week or months to let go.
mhm.
It took me a year until I started feeling more comfortable. It was a complete state of misalignment. It's like you have your mind, but
Right.
you cannot trust your mind because a lot of the time your mind is telling
Mm,
you things
it
that are,
lies to you. Right.
yeah. And I think that our
Right.
mind lies to us a lot of the time, but there is a
Sure.
different angle of lying. Like like that was way bigger than that. That's like a lie,
Yeah.
like a panic attack. Like those that are going in the mind are
Yes.
a little bit different than being nervous to take a test or to go for an
Yeah.
interview.
There's
Or
a different level of nervousness or anxiety associated with those things. You're right.
yeah,
And thank you for being vulnerable and talking about that.
absolutely.
I think it's important for people to hear that and to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it may not be easy to get there. It may take some work and some effort, but you can get there. And
Yes,
thank you so much for sharing that.
yes. It's definitely we can get there. I think the challenge that we have is that for most people, like they have a life, like they have a job, they have kids,
Right.
they have all of this to-do list, and sometimes healing takes it's like the nervous system is not functioning well. So for example, I was able to do before that I was able to work 35 hours a week of contact work, like doing sessions.
Hmm.
After that I went down to 15. Like that was my max. If I was to go
Really?
15, I started getting too stressed. I needed to spend more time in the woods, more time with myself, to take care of my own energy.
That's boy,
And by the
that's
way,
a big difference.
it was a huge difference. However, it's true to everyone. Because let's talk about functioning adults.
Hmm.
Let's pretend that there is a term like this.
Right. Right.
Okay, so let's say you work 40 hours a week. That's the average time that you work. If you're
Hmm.
gonna work, let's say for me, if I'm gonna work less than that, I'm gonna be a little bit happier. If I'm going to work over that, if I'm going to work 50, 60 hours a week, somebody's going to pay the price. Yes, it's going to be myself. However,
Hmm.
it's going to be my family as a result. I'm not going to be the same person that I am if I'm overusing the resources that I have.
That's an interesting point, because I think that there are those that are out there listening that could be considered workaholics. Let's just call it that.
Yeah.
And that's a patterning. But you're right, because I don't think, well, I know a lot of times you think, it's fine, nothing's changing me. I love what I do. I thrive in this. But there's only so much of that. And let's just say that you're in a stressful 9 to 5 job, which isn't 9 to 5, then it becomes 9 to 9 or
Yeah.
4:30 a.m. till 9 o'clock at night. And you're right. When you think everything's okay, you don't notice how things are crumbling around you. Like you had mentioned family, what a toll that it takes on a family, because there is frustration that comes out. There is anxiety. There is a lot of emotion that comes out that you may not even know comes out,
Yes.
right? Because you're unaware. You're just, because you're focused so intently on that work or that project or what have you. And that's
Yes.
interesting that you bring that up.
However, like if I'll take back a little bit what you're saying, a person is not becoming workaholic overnight.
True.
Okay, it's like there are cases like that they call traumas. All right, like for
Hmm.
example, somebody passes away, and then a person take that belief that, let's say, if my partner passes away, I have to do whatever I have to do in order to support my family, and I'm just going to be obsessed with work. This is like an example of an overnight.
Hmm.
However, in most cases, it's back to safety. It's like a person is saying, I'm better off working right now than being with my family. And that
Mm,
becomes a pattern. Okay, it becomes a pattern.
yeah.
And after years of behavior, the person doesn't know how it's be, how it's how it how he experiences she experiences
Hmm.
work when he's not obsessed with work. Okay, like for example, a person who is never exercised, never been to the gym or went for a walk or did anything for their mental health, their mind doesn't even know how to think about it. There is, in yoga we call it aversion. Like we have aversion.
Hmm.
We don't know what it is, so we reject it automatically.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it seems like it is something that's developed, much like a muscle, I suppose, but it is out of self-preservation almost,
And the
that
muscle
you're
of
doing
aversion.
that. Yeah.
And that's we touch upon it before. That's why I think meditation as a practice is so important, because it's not
Oh,
about
yes.
the focus or the fairies or the butterfly that you might watch. It's not about those high experiences. It's like our mind is going all the time when we are masters of denial,
Yes.
and how just by being with that, it creates magic in people's life. I've seen it over and over again.
That's great. And another great response. Thank you. Um, so you had mentioned toxic masculinity before, and you say toxic masculinity was part of your shadow work.
Yes.
What specific body part holds toxic masculinity, and how do men literally feel it leaving when they release it?
I think that it's the heart, but with that being said, every person holds tension different in their body. Some people
Right.
have hold it in their lower back. Some people in their neck, in their throat, in their head, in their eyes. Some people in their gut, in the diaphragm area. So I from working with people, I don't assume that, for example, if I'm going to work with somebody holding toxic masculinity,
Hmm.
it's one specific area. The second part that you asked me, I think, was what happened when they released that.
Yes.
they're able to, it's a shadow, so they're able to experience themselves. So for me, for example, I grew up in the Middle East, so it's a more macho and more like strong masculinity, like don't show weaknesses, show that
Weakness,
you're in
right?
control. For me, it's the ability to be vulnerable in situations, to listen to my heart, to cry, to experience all of this range of emotions that my unconscious mind was not allowing me to experience before. To say things like I don't know.
Right. That's a big one too, where I think we as men oftentimes take it upon ourselves to fix something. You know what I mean? Where you just go, oh, I gotta fix that. When somebody's talking to you about something and they may just want to vent, and I'll speak for myself, my mind typically goes, well, how can I fix this? How can I solve this problem?
Yeah,
And it's not,
it's not broken.
yeah, right.
It's not broken.
No.
That's the beauty of when you open, you realize it's just a different way of communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Like for men, we're a lot of men, they know how to repress it, so they still in the kinesthetic
Right.
part of their existence that they're suppressing it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
language is a great way to communicate, and people
Yes.
are, for a lot of people, this is the way of releasing energy through conversation.
That's an
Just the
interesting
way of
perspective.
expressing, same way that some people are visual.
Yes. I can speak again for myself that when you mention repression of emotions and things like that, a lot of people may think that when you repress certain emotions, it's just an emotion. It's nothing physical. Well, it becomes physical
It becomes
because I got to the point where I was nearly 400 pounds. Now, sure, there were poor eating habits, and I was trying to do like make the pain go away type of thing, and whether it be from food or alcohol or painkillers, because I was in a lot of pain at that time too. But it does, it does impact your body. Stress and emotions and not being vulnerable or your authentic self does take a toll on you. And it wasn't until I got to the point where meditation was such a huge part of that, by the way. But it wasn't until I was able to be my authentic self and speak my truth, and I was doing all of the things. I started to be more involved with movement, with physicality, working out, and things like that. So mind, body, spirit really did kick in to help with that loss, the weight loss of 150 some odd pounds. And since I've kept that practice, I've kept the weight off. I don't think it's by mistake that's happened. I think that
yeah.
it's due to the new way of life that was probably a very old way of life when you think about those things.
Yes,
You know.
I think
Um,
I think
Go
with
ahead.
what you're saying, it's there is so much power in the emotions. It's like there is so much communication that happens with emotions, with the body, that
Mm-hmm.
when we're suppressing them, we're thinking that we're not aware of them or that they're not happening. We just I said
Ignore.
my client told me a week ago. That I worked with her like a few months ago. Uh, that old way of not going to the gym and not eating healthy and talking shit to herself was actually taking way more energy than right now that she's not doing that. So we
Yes.
thinking we gaining energy from that or from repressing it, but actually there is so much energy, unconscious energy going into that progression. That's why when people are releasing that, all of a sudden energy starts to flow. So, and then they're getting, like the energy is flowing. So the body starts working, their body start becoming healthy, because being in stress, nothing good is happening to the body. The body
Right.
is stuck, the energy is stuck, and we have to release that and let the energy flow, and then the body starts healing itself, because being healthy is our natural state. And I think people should
Right.
remember that being sick is not natural, being healthy is natural. We're here to be healthy.
That's very good. So I have a question for you as it relates to that release. And I would imagine over 20,000 plus sessions, you've probably seen this. When somebody releases that trauma, can you actually see or feel when it leaves them?
Absolutely.
What does that look like? Or where can you see that something like physically in their body, or what does that
Everybody
appear?
will be different. There are people that experience the breakthrough right in the session. Like one of my mentors, Jack Cornfield, he calls it a vipassana facelift, to that experience that people come and they meditate for a few days, and after that, like their whole face is lighting up and they let go
Right.
of all of that tension. So it's the same thing. I see people that are just, they don't carry that weight anymore. Now, from my perspective, if to do it in a session or to do it over a few sessions and let it happen in a life, I think it's a choice. And I prefer to let people do the work by themselves, so it happens naturally in their life. Because as practitioners, and any kind of practitioner, any person who holds session, you can do the session for the sake of the session. That's a lot of like motivational speaking, for
Sure.
example. Or you can do the session with the intention for the person's life. And I will always prefer to do something that will serve people in their life versus in the 90 minutes, 2
Right.
hours, an hour they have with me, they will say, wow, this is amazing. I always look how you integrate it.
Yeah, I think the other one is more ego for you than it is for
Absolutely. You're right on it.
helping somebody get through something. So I know that you've trained with masters in the East and the West.
Yeah.
What's the one thing Eastern wisdom gets wrong about trauma? And what's the one thing Western therapy, we use the term therapy, misses completely?
It's been many years since I practiced with Eastern Masters, like 20 plus years ago, and also later. But I don't think they understand the complex of life that we have here. Like when I was in the mountains of the Himalayas, they didn't have social media and phone and responsibilities,
right.
and the work that in
Monks.com. Yeah.
95, I think, from a point of history, we're really in a place that we've never been with the amount of stimulation that we have. Because if I compare myself for you or our listeners, it's like we get more stimulation in an hour than a monk in the Himalaya get in a year. It's
right.
You can't compare the two.
No, that's fascinating to me that you mentioned that, because I've had conversations with people. Let's talk about children, for example. I can't imagine the pressures and the stress that kids today have that we didn't have to contend with because of what you mentioned, social media, overstimulated minds, because there's always something new, something immediate. And that's the thing about news too. You talk about diet, right? And diet isn't just consumption of food. it's what you consume around you. And if you have almost instantaneous access to information, news, and let's be honest, most news we get to make it newsworthy is negative because they're looking for that attention, those clicks or what have you. It's got to be tough. I mean, it's got to be really difficult. What's some advice you might give someone as it relates to that? You know, when you get frustrated with your kids or, you know, that they're not paying attention, a lot of times it's because their brains are reprogrammed to be, you know, always scrolling down, or what do they call it? Doom scrolling. Yeah. I think what might be some advice you have?
Big picture, I think it's the most important thing, perspective. Like for me as a parent, the question that changed my mind is like, how do I want my relationship to be, and what I want my relationship to be based on.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on the child. However, there are times that I see my kid is doing a behavior that is not serving them.
Okay.
And we also have to remember that the world that they live and the world that we live, they're two different worlds.
Absolutely. I'm going to bounce back because when you were talking about that, it just, I have an ADHD mind. So if there's a shiny object, I'm all over the place, and that happens. So sorry.
Yeah. And
by the
way, that's not a weakness.
No, I don't view it as that. You know, sometimes people around me, they may,
you know, like
but I don't.
You know, we live with the school system that is based about teaching our kids how to obey instead of how to be engaged.
That's very true. I mean, that's very true.
Yeah.
So Western therapy, what is Western therapy whiff on completely?
It's not, now we're catching up, but it's the body. We consider things to be too mental. Like talk therapy, for example, is one of these things that we completely ignore the body. We completely ignore the feeling, the emotions. Also, from a business point of view, I think it's about maintaining the client. As a practitioner, this is their business. They want to have a full book, and in order to have a full book, they maintaining their clients. It's not about necessarily about helping clients, because it's ignore all of these different things. Don't get me wrong. I love talk therapy, but it's important that the person is eating healthy, that he's sleeping, that he's exercising, that he has community, that he has friends, and he has other places to go to,
right?
Nourish himself.
So this is where I think the hypnotherapy really comes into play. Let's take a moment and talk about that and how you integrate that into your practice for your clients.
Yeah.
How do you determine that that's the best course of action for one of your clients?
So basically, I have two kind of businesses that I run. I have a movement practice and I have a hypnotherapy line. So people that come to me to hypnotherapy, they're ready to work on it through hypnotherapy. They either learned about it from their friend who work with me, or they find me online or something like that. So they're coming and they're ready. They have a hint. It's not. I think with hypnotherapy, it's very hard to market it as something, because every form of hypnotherapy is different.
Right.
And so we start with the client. We start with the the problem that they're having, and we start with the context of the client, because they're great. You know, they're great hypnotherapy tracks on YouTube that you can find, listen, to sleep, to eat healthy, to do whatever you want to do to perform. What I do is more a one-on-one custom work that the context is the client. So I ask my client questions. This is how I start to determine what they want. And this is something that a lot of people don't. They take it for granted that they have to, because we live in a society and they think like, all right, so I'm going to fit into a salsa dancing class. I'm going to do Zumba. I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go to Asian restaurant or to whatever. Like, people like to think where they are in the menu of life, and it's more like one-on-one. What do you want? What the context? Why are you here? What you here to overcome? How the problem that you have is a problem for you, and how do you want to move through that?
So I mentioned to you that we've had hypnotherapists on the show before, and one of the common themes or threads that comes through in conversations with hypnotherapists is how fast the results surface versus standard forms of therapy and talk therapy. And I'm not well versed because, number one, I'm not a therapist, but I am curious about this, because if someone's experiencing a tremendous amount of pain, and it could be PTSD, could be a number of different things that is the trigger or the cause, they want to get to that relief point faster, right? Why isn't that? Well, I guess you answered that book of business type of thing. I was
No,
thinking, why
go ahead
aren't
with
people
what.
going for that? Yeah, um, you know, I started to make it personal for me, and maybe I shouldn't have. So I lost the frame of that question, because all of a sudden I started thinking, okay, well, how could that benefit me by doing hypnotherapy? So that's I'm intrigued by it, because I think there's a big value to it. But I think there's more to it than just the hypnotherapy. There's got to be something more that makes it so successful.
Hypnotherapy is a tool. I'll start with that. Hypnotherapy is a tool that first, and I believe in that. Every form of hypnosis is self-hypnosis. I cannot hypnotize a person. I can help him hypnotize himself. I'm guiding them, I'm creating the environment. They're going and putting these ideas to the mind. If I'm going to say to you, Jim, eat more greens, it's a general statement, and you have a choice if you want to accept that. I gave you something that is silly stupid as an example. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The idea of hypnotherapy and why it works is because it focused on the belief. The behavior that people have, if it's pain, if it's trauma, if it's anxiety, is a result of something else. It's a result of a belief. If I, for example, for myself, I was feeling anxious, that was the behavior that I was suffering from. It was sitting in the belief that the world is not safe, that I am not safe.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's true for everything. That's true for self-expression. If I believe that I can be myself and thrive in the world for being myself, and doing well in the world for being myself, even making money for the world for being myself, that's a different story.
Yes. Entirely different story. So how do you go about helping someone get from point A to point F?
So
Then
first I get to what point A, because the problem that people have and the problem that they think that they're having is a little bit different problem. As we discussed before, we have a mind that is a master of denial and doesn't really want to show us the problem. A lot of time I get to people to what the problem is, and I call it's usually like a 5 to 7 degrees of separation of questions seeing what the issue is to what the people think the issue is to what the issue is about. And then when
Okay.
they get that, their nervous system is able to process that
Mm,
that stress response, because it say like, wow, I've been just lying to myself, for example. And
right.
then it's like, instead of trying to hide that for so many years, wow, that's true, or to say something, I've been not nice to my partner this morning, like to take
Mm-hmm.
ownership of that. And I think that, a lot of therapy, there isn't ownership of the situation. And that's why I love what I do, because it's so empowering people. Because people want to feel empowered. People don't want the work to be done for themselves. That's why they go to, they use
Right.
other kind of material.
Sure.
There is
Sure.
nothing wrong with that. I don't judge it. In many situations, I think it helps people to deal with life better. So this is the first step, that we get to what the problem is really, what the problem is. And then
Mm-hmm.
from understanding what the problem is, we are able to make the connection to what the person wants. Like, let's say if you had the magic wand and this is the problem, what did you want? So, it's like all of this, there is the triangle of where the person is, where the real problem is, and where the solution. Once the person realized that the problem that he has is not really what he thought, the solution is different.
Hmm.
The person is able to see that what he was looking for, whatever it is, I'm looking for $10 million that I will not have to suffer
Right.
for one more hour of my life. Okay? Once you realize that work is not the problem, like, for example, using that as an example, the solution is different. People want something different. We have
Gotcha.
a mind that say, I want to avoid that. But in reality, people are looking for a way to deal with life. They're not looking for a way not to deal with life. And once
Right.
they realize that's what's in front of them, and then there is the real problem, and there is the real solution, and then there is a dance that we're going with. And what a hypnotist does is helping you to take the critical thinking down in a very light way. Okay, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be like an ayahuasca or something
Right.
like
It's a
that.
monumental shift, right?
Yeah, it's something that happens. It's a dance. Okay, so we
Mm-hmm.
take the critical thinking down, because when we're kids, before the age of 9, 10, our critical thinking is down. If you will say to a kid, look outside, the sky is green, he will look outside, he will believe you. I said that to you, you see your eyes didn't even, I don't know if you have windows where you are, but they didn't even
Yes.
go outside, right?
Right.
You so know that the sky cannot be green, okay? So what we do by using metaphor, using stories, endless, the toolbox box is huge, is we helping people take that critical thinking down. And then what we do, we are pretty much disassociating from the problem, that this is what they, if they went, most of my clients, they went for over 10 years of therapy and they have a PhD in knowing what their problem is. So we disassociate from them. And what we do, we anchoring the solution that they want to have.
Okay.
And it's their solution. You see, the point is, it's not
Right.
healthy. I'm asking my clients to know what they want. Okay, like the mind work in a problem state and a solution state. And I'm in that session, I'm anchoring the solution of how they want, how they see the world. So one side of it is letting go of the trauma, letting go of whatever the belief that is not serving, and anchoring a belief that is going to answer and
Work out.
serve.
Okay.
Serve the individual. It's not right or
Right.
wrong. Is it serving you or not serving?
Or not. Right. 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 So when you were talking about or describing point A being find essentially what that lie is, what are you lying to yourself about? or hiding what maybe I might be saying it incorrectly, but it's not the real problem. You're hiding you're telling yourself something else to avoid what the real problem is.
In many situations, it is. In some situations, people know what they do know what the problem is.
Okay. So I'm wondering what it looks like or what the response is when people come to that realization, or they go that aha moment for them when they realize that, I've been telling myself this story that it's this when it's really not.
Yeah.
It's
I think
it's
there is
that.
I think there is peace in that.
I would think there would be, just thinking about it, that there would be some sort of relief that you go, oh, I don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah, because the mind is in a broken record trying to understand what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And that's like one of my mentors says, when we have a problem, the only thing that we're focusing is on the problem. What exists other than the problem? Nothing for the person who is in the problem. So let's say the problem is I don't like myself. All right. This is an example.
Okay.
What exists other than I don't like myself? Everything.
Yeah.
I love myself. The sun, the moon, the
Yeah.
person that is with me in the room right now. So, when people go to that, that's what's stuck with them. What's wrong with them? And that's the real thing that we're unlocking in hypnotherapy, because a lot of time I like for practice and to play around with hypnotherapy, a lot of time I did sessions with people that I asked them specifically, I don't want to know the problem is. You can know it in your mind. And I heard the same amount of success without knowing.
Verbalizing it or what have you. Yeah,
We
that
don't
I could see
manipulate
that.
it. Like, the a person who has the weight issues or anxiety or whatever, they go with that. They're focusing on the problem all the time.
Right,
They don't know
consciously
how
or
not to focus on the problem.
unconsciously.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in your toolbox, you have a lot of different healing modalities, like 10 different healing modalities. If you had to delete all but one from existence, which one would you keep to help humanity heal? And why would you do that?
Love. That's the beginning and the end of it. The intention of
Yeah, that's a good blanket.
work with each other. All the
That is
tools
a
are
good,
great, but
yeah.
love is, it's what we in hypnotherapy we call it H plus. In in yoga we have a different name for it. In Reiki they call it Reiki, but basically the idea to connect to our heart and to work from there.
That's a great place to start, and it's a great place to end, isn't it?
Yeah.
It covers a lot of ground. With that 4-letter word. That's one of the good 4-letter words, I think, as far as I'm concerned. Well, why don't we do this? I know that I had mentioned to you the possibility of doing the body scan.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot with that. I think we've covered, unless you want to. That's entirely up to you.
Or any other thing that you think people will benefit with. We can do a game of words, of associations, of whatever it is. We can keep it open.
We're going to jump into the musical questions. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely. Looking forward to that.
Excellent.
I'm a big movement fan, and music and movement. And this is my way of releasing stress and connecting with myself is movement.
I'll tell you what, I think a body in motion stays in motion. That's for sure. Okay, so here's question number 1. What was the first song that you fell in love with that you can remember saying, I can't wait to hear that song again?
I don't have a song like that. I don't have much memory of music before the age of 20 or something like that. I grew up really
Oh, wow.
liking Israeli rock of the 90s, and I really started listening to music after the army. So that's
Okay.
yeah.
So then let's do that way. What was one of the songs that you remember after getting out of the army?
Um, One of the songs, I guess Bob Marley was one of my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, Three Little Birds. I think it's one of my favorite natural music. Natural Mystic always put
Oh, yes.
that in that vibe. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm a big reggae guy. I'm a big fan of Marley.
yeah.
Big fan of his. That's fantastic. That's a good one. That's a real good one. I'm not sure. You said so. Growing up, the family singing songs probably wouldn't hold true to you.
No, not so much.
What about now?
Now, so I had a phase like what I really, talking about spirituality. I got
Hmm.
into EDM music.
Oh, okay.
Trance music. I used to love, when in my early 20s, I used to love going to nature parties and raves and that all experience of, I don't know, 100 people, 1,000 people, 2,000 people dancing together in a
Yeah.
sunrise, samurai. That's, that is close to God as it gets for me.
So that's interesting that you say that because I mention in it regularly that I think music is the tie that binds us all together. And sometimes people will go, "Yeah, I don't know about that." But the example that you just gave is the best example of that. Or it could be a concert where all of a sudden you may not be somebody that outwardly will start dancing or something, but you tap your toe
Yeah,
or tap your finger on your knee. There's something about there's something about music that connects everyone in that moment. And I think it's so inspiring, and it's bigger than we realize.
absolutely.
So I think one of the questions that will make some sense to you is, what's the song that gets the positive juices flowing?
Positive juice. Hmm, uh, I guess I love My Way, Frank Sinatra.
Ah, okay.
With positive, I listened this morning before What a Wonderful World. That's definitely on a positive.
Oh, Louis Armstrong. Yep.
Uh, yes, but for kind of My Way, give me that self-empowering and kind of like that feeling of putting it all out, like
Hmm.
being committed, committed to myself.
Being your authentic self.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good one. I like that.
So
Thanks.
and
That's
and I
a
like
real good one.
I really like reggae. I like hip hop. And I love jazz. And
Mm,
I can listen to jazz. I would prefer without words usually.
okay.
Because I think people are very different. For me, for example, I don't really listen to the words so much when I'm listening to the music. Like I remember the
Interesting.
sentences, and for example, I part of my life, I really get to listen to music with people, and I have people who understand. They know every word of the song, and my mind doesn't
Doesn't work that
remember.
way. Yeah.
Like I'm not a verbal. I'm more of kinesthetic person. The way I perceive the world, so that's
I
explained.
have a friend that's like that. My friend Carrie is more emotes through dance than singing. And yeah, so yeah, I understand exactly what you're talking about, where each person reacts to a song differently. And you know what's very interesting, the Foo Fighters, Dave
Yeah,
Grohl talks about the perfect rhythm to get people moving. and it's bump, 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 bump. And it's where people can jump up and down for their songs. And he just said, it's just right. And he said, when we want to have those, most of their songs are like that because he wants everybody in motion and feeling and being a part of it. So yeah, it's that's very interesting. Do you have a guilty pleasure song?
Not right now. Not right now.
So you're not a Taylor Swift, a closet
No,
Swiftie?
I'm not a closet Swiftie. I can be the Ed Sheeran, maybe that
Oh, I
one.
like
I
Ed
believe in
Sheeran.
the shape of you, or
Oh yeah,
that,
yeah.
that sometimes I like the
That's
tune of this song.
so. This one might be a tough one for you,
Yeah.
but what's a song you believe could change the way people think or feel about the world around them if they just listen to the song's lyrics?
The message, we spoke about it earlier, like half an hour ago in the conversation. Cornerstone by Bob Marley.
Oh yeah.
So it's exactly the thing people it doesn't come the word. The thing people refuse are the thing they should choose, and it's basically about the aversion that we have, to the world, to ourselves. If we're able to pay more attention to that instead of rejecting it, and I think there isn't something that is more present to our future, especially that we live in this cancel culture, that you don't like one person that a person say and you just cancel that person. I think, and it's something that as a parent I'm working with my kids, like, listen deeper, be present, see what there is other than this one thing that you don't like. Because I work with people who did crazy things with their life, and
Right.
positive and negative,
Yeah.
but there is something positive behind it. Like the intention is the intention is to look for love. It's just like the wrong strategy that we get from the world, and I think that's where the power is in stepping into our aversion.
That's very cool and very insightful. Okay, this will be my last question for you as it relates to music, but I will ask you to send me your playlist. Sometimes there are songs you hear that ring so true that they can stop you in your tracks. And the song's lyrics sound like they were either written specifically for you or by you. What's that song?
I think back to My Way, Frank Sinatra.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
it's about, I think, about self-belief in our own path, kind of being true to our own path.
I like that. That's a strong choice. And thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Well, it's just about time to cue the music for today's episode, but don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Drop the Needle podcast to stay up to date on our latest episodes. I would also like to take a moment to thank everyone again for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Drop the Needle podcast. And I would also like to thank our special guest, Mr. Matan Kohan-Sitran, for being on our show today. Matan, can you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Thank you first. It's been a pleasure being here with you. And
this was great. I really enjoyed this.
I guess for best place is my website, Matan S Movement. So MATANS movement.com. I also have the same thing on Instagram. I'm sure whoever wants to find me will find me.
Excellent. And I'll make sure that I put those handles in the show notes. Speaking of, I invite you to head on over to our show notes where you'll find a link to today's playlist, as well as the things that we just mentioned, how to get in touch with Matan. All right, my Drop the Needle posse, like Billy Joel says, from the highs to the lows to the end of our show, this is the end of our show. Until next time, this is Jim Alstott wishing you infinite health, happiness, and the perfect playlist for your life. Thank you again for being the best part of us. Catch you next time.